Book name: Spirit Wolf, by author Karima Saad Usman. Chapter 1: Escape. Warning: this book is dark with many ups and downs, not for the emotional or faint-hearted. Samantha. The wolves chased my mother and me through the woods, trying to kill us. My father had been betrayed and killed by his best friend. They had also killed my brother. We were running for our lives. We had never lived outside our pack before, but the fear of death had made the unknown our safest option. "Sam, give me your sweater and wear this," my mother called out, tossing me a smelly sweater. I did as she said. "Go north. There is a pack that would take you in. Do not let anyone know your family name or the pack you are from. We are in werewolf territory. Whatever story you give, make sure you only speak of werewolves. They must not know, Sam. Trust no one," she instructed. "Mother," I cried, "why are you saying this? If I come with you, none of us will survive. Promise me you'll survive, Sam," she pleaded. By then, I had figured out her plan. The sweater she gave me was to hide my scent. My mother was going to sacrifice her life so that I could survive. I knew I couldn't convince her otherwise, and I knew the hunting party intended to end our lives. "Listen to me, Sam," she held my face to look into my eyes. "You must survive. Our bloodline must not end. Promise me." I hesitated, but when she shook me fiercely, I nodded. She kissed my forehead, told me she loved me, shifted to her wolf form, and ran in the opposite direction. I knew that was the last time I would see her. I was only 15. I ran till I got to the Yellow Moon Pack territory. I was immediately arrested at the gate and locked up in their cell for trespassing. It was in the cell that the reality of my situation dawned on me, and I began to weep. My entire family had been wiped out. I never got to say goodbye to them. I was alone. I didn't know why my mother instructed me to never disclose my family name, but I chose to obey her last wishes. "Speak, girl," the guard yelled as he slapped me hard across the face. I had been locked up for 2 days with no food and water. Hope and determination were what kept me going. They had asked me several questions, and I answered all that I could. Unfortunately for me, the questions I could answer were not much, which made me seem suspicious. "That's enough," I heard a deep voice say. I looked up and saw a man in his late 40s. He had jet black hair and blue eyes. He was huge, and his presence was dominant. The guard immediately stopped what he was doing. "Alpha wild breed," he greeted, "we found this girl trespassing. She has refused to tell us where she is from and her mission here," he explained. "What is her name?" the Alpha asked. "Samantha Blackwell," I replied. "Miss Blackwell, why are you here?" he asked me directly. "To survive, sir," I managed to reply. "Where is your family?" he asked. "They were killed by some werewolves. I am alone," I replied. "What was the name of your pack?" he asked me, and I paused a while before I could not give a reply. My mother's instructions were clear. I wasn't to reveal my identity to anyone, so I had to think of a lie. My parents were cast out of their pack before I was born. I grew up outside the pack. I lied. "She is Rogue," a man exclaimed. "A daughter of Rogue," the Alpha corrected, and it broke my heart. I felt I had brought shame and disgrace upon my parents. "How old are you?" the Alpha asked. "I am 15 years old, sir," I replied, and I heard him pause. "You can stay here," he finally said, "but you will have to work to earn your keep." "But Alpha," a man tried to protest, but the Alpha told him to be quiet. "Do not make me regret taking you in, child," he finally said to me and left. As soon as he left, the shackles were taken off and I was escorted to the staff quarters. There was no room for me, so I was taken to a small room that was in disrepair at the back of the animal shed. "Sure, you can fix it up, Rogue girl. Work starts at 4 a.m. Don't miss out on your chores. I have instructed the other servants to keep an eye on you," the scary guard said and left. Chapter 2: Sudden Storm. Samantha. My first night in the room was long and hard. It wasn't just the state of the room that kept me up, the state of my heart also made it impossible for me to sleep. I hadn't mourned my parents properly, and I never knew if I would ever get the chance to. The image of my mother's wolf was burned into my memory. I wondered if she escaped. Glover had betrayed my father and eradicated my entire family. My whole world changed that night, and the most painful part of it was I could never speak of it to anyone to keep my identity a secret. There was a knock on my door the next morning. A girl was sent to bring me clothes. They were used and did not fit well, but I appreciated the generosity of the pack. The people at the pack house were not welcoming. They looked at me with suspicion. Finding food that morning was impossible. The cook had deliberately locked the kitchen to prevent me from getting something to eat. At first, I thought it was by mistake, but when I asked for food, the woman told me to go and get something to eat in the wilderness. After all, that was where I came from. She also referred to me as a rogue and told me she hopes I leave their settlement when I get my wolf. Her words were hurting, but she wasn't the only one that was cruel to me in that place. Everybody was mean and nasty. I had to do my chores with an empty stomach. The fact that I was not fed while I was locked up did not help matters either. I wondered how much longer I would have to go without food. Luckily for me, while I was emptying the trash, I found a couple of half-eaten sandwiches. I immediately looked around to be sure no one was watching. I picked all the sandwiches and went to eat them in my room. It was sandy but satisfying. I began to weep as soon as I finished eating them. I never knew a time would come when I would have to eat from the trash. This was my life now, and it wasn't pleasant. They came to call me for dinner in the evening. I was surprised because of the way I was treated in the morning. Although I was invited, I wasn't allowed to eat until everyone had been fed. So once again, I was left with the leftovers. It wasn't just me this time around, there were 3 of us. The only good part about the dinner was that it wasn't sandy and didn't come from the trash. "How are you settling in?" one of the girls asked me. She was older. I could tell that she was 20. Her fully developed body indicated she would soon get her wolf and maybe her mate. She didn't look cared for, and her eyes were hollow and dead. There was no more warmth in her eyes. Was this how I would look in 5 years? I thought to myself. I began to dread the years that were to come. I was the youngest of 3 rogues in the pack. Jessie was 17 years, and Elisa was 20. Elisa intended to leave once her wolf came. The girls taught me how to survive in the pack. We ate leftovers and mended worn and torn clothes to wear. I was able to fix up my room with things I found in the trash. No matter how nice I made the room, it still looked like a room full of junk. The roof leaked during the rainy seasons, and there was no heat to keep me warm through the winter. The younger pack members picked on us often, especially me, since I was the latest addition. Living there was hell, but the pain of losing my family and not knowing what happened to my mother was greater. Slowly days turned into weeks and weeks into months. I was gradually becoming numb to my pain and situation. 11 months in the pack. Someone barged into my room and dragged me out. I could not make out what was going on because my mind was still foggy from sleep. It was the middle of the night. "Lay her down over here." I heard a hard voice command. It was cold and raining. I looked around, and they were all wearing their raincoats. I was the only one soaking wet. A man violently held my face, so I could look at him. "Where are they?" he demanded. I was confused. I did not know what he was talking about. "It needs some motivation to speak," I heard a voice say. I immediately knew who it was. I knew it was Alexander. He was the only one that referred to rogues as it. He was 21 years old, and he was the son of the Alpha. He usually helped his father with certain duties. I began to fear because I knew he was ruthless, and the few times that I met him were unfortunate and unpleasant. "Alex, I was tired of how my father showed the rogues pity and kindness. They were rogues for a reason, and now my father will come to terms with it. The stupid and inconsiderate things had stolen a family heirloom and cash from my parents' room when they went in to clean the place. The moonstone they stole was the pack's good luck charm. We knew bad things would happen if we did not recover the moonstone. I needed this rogue to tell me where it was, and I was determined to get the information out of her. Make her understand we are not playing, I ordered the guard that held her to the ground. Samantha. The silver whip came down hard on my skin. The pain was blinding. I had never been flailed in my life. This was the first time, and the pain was unbearable. Why? I began to cry. Clueless about what had happened. The thrashing stopped, and Alexander spoke to me. "Where are your rogue friends?" he asked. "In their rooms," I replied between sobs, and he laughed. "Do we look like fools to you?" he asked. "Your friends have stolen the pack's moonstone and some money." "Where are they?" he demanded. My eyes widened at his statement. I was told that every werewolf pack had a unique moonstone. It was believed to be a gift from the moon goddess herself. What had Jesse and Elisa done? Where were they? I was confused. Alex. I could read the confusion in the rogue's eyes. There was a probability that she wasn't a part of this, but unfortunately for her, I was going to make her a scapegoat until the moonstone was recovered, and the two thieves had been brought to justice. "Take her away," I ordered. I formed a search party, each wolf with a scent of the remaining two rogues, to search and find them outside the settlement. I knew they hadn't gotten far, but we also had to move quickly to increase our chances of finding them. Chapter 3, Injustice. Alex. The rain had subsided. I knew there was no way those two traitors could have gone far. I had instructed the wolves to spread out. We had to find the moonstone, or great misfortune would befall the pack. I got to a path where there was a strong smell of cow dung. This was quite confusing as there were no settlements close by, and we never took our livestock out for grazing. Our lands were wide enough. I began to suspect the cow stench was deliberate. Wolves had a strong sense of smell, and the only way to throw them off was to scramble the scent. This made me more determined to follow the stench. I quickly linked the pack members that were near to join me. Samantha. The Luna came to see me in my cell. I wasn't happy about her visit because she never liked me. The situation was scary. I dreaded what they would do to me. Stealing a pack's moonstone was an unforgivable crime. I was brought before Luna Michelle in chains. They had beaten me so badly that my body ached, and my left eye was swollen. "Where is my moonstone?" she yelled. I began to cry because I did not know where it was. It was true that the three of us had gone into their room to fix it up, but I had only cleaned the toilet and left. I did not take anything. I tried to explain to her, but she wouldn't listen. Instead, she requested a whip and asked the guard to drag me to the field. Most of the pack members were there waiting. I knew immediately what was about to happen. Luna Michelle intended to disgrace me and punish me in the open. The moonstone was gone. The Alpha and Luna had to show control by catching the people that stole it, retrieving the stone, and punishing the culprit. What she was about to do to me was an effort to keep the pack's confidence in her and her mate. Deep down I believed if they searched their room hard enough they would find their stone. I didn't want to believe my friends would have been stupid enough to steal the moonstone. I knew they could take the money but not the stone. Behold one of the thieves. A rogue whom we took pity on, she announced to all, "My son is out there in the rain trying to apprehend the rest of the culprits. Thank the moon goddess we caught this one before she could get away," she said. She had just lied to the pack. I didn't steal anything, and I wasn't trying to run away. I was sleeping in my room when they came for me. I was disappointed at the way she lied. She was meant to be a leader, and she ruled by lying to her people. My mother never lied, no matter how embarrassing the situation was, she never lied. This Luna was wicked and cruel. "Kill her," some people began to scream. "We will only show her mercy if she tells us where her accomplices are," the Luna said. "No mercy," I heard one growl. I knew that there was a possibility that I would die that night. Before I could plead for mercy, the thrashing began. Alex. We finally found the two rogues hiding in a tiny cave in the forest. They were covered in cow dung. The older one immediately shifted into a brown wolf for defense. I did not intend to kill any of them. Instead of killing it, I wounded it, and we dragged them back to the settlement. What I discovered angered me. My mother had beaten the rogue I locked up to a pulp. The rogue was unconscious. I wondered where my father was. I knew my mother could be extreme, but it was uncalled for, especially when I had linked her and told her the rogue was innocent. Immediately I left to get my father, but I let her see the look of disappointment on my face. I have gotten the rogues responsible, I told my father, getting to his office. Thank the goddess, he said, sighing, and the stone? They didn't have it. All they had on them was money. I explained. Are you sure, son? My father asked. I could hear the worry in his voice. Yes, apparently, one of the rogues was rejected by her mate, and she decided to flee. The plan was to steal some money and run away. I explained. What about the one you caught earlier? He asked. That one wasn't involved. She was only punished because she was part of the cleaning party, I explained. I immediately saw the disappointment on my father's face. A few minutes later, my mother walked in. Why would you lie to the pack like that? He asked her. You knew the poor girl was innocent, yet you chose to treat her like that. What will you tell the pack now? In fact, as the custodian of the moonstone, where did you keep it? My father asked. My mother was too afraid to respond. He was angry, and it was easy for him to show disgust towards my mother because she was not his fated mate. He had only mated and marked her out of desperation when he didn't find his fated mate, something he had lived to regret. Alex, send Samantha to the infirmary, he ordered. Looking at him, I knew my parents were going to fight that night. Because of what my mother did, we had to let the pack continue to believe the rogues had stolen the moonstone while a selected few searched my parents' quarters thoroughly for the stone. The stone was found in one of my mother's jewelry box. My mother had panicked when she found money missing and did not bother to search properly before raising an alarm. My heart was heavy for Samantha. She was the youngest and yet the most innocent of the rogues. She had not been tainted by reality yet. I knew I needed to protect her innocence. So I requested to have her move to my quarters and clean my apartment. That way she would be away from the pack and protected from the hatred my mother had created towards her. She was only 16. The wolves in my quarters knew the truth, and I instructed them to be kind to the rogue. As for the other two, they were to remain in servitude for 5 years under harsh circumstances. If they hadn't stolen money, my mother would not have panicked about the moonstone. They were left in the pack house to face the consequences of their actions. Chapter 4, New Station. Samantha. I spent a week recovering in the pack hospital. The staff were unkind to me, and I didn't receive gentle treatment, but I was used to the cruelty. I was just grateful to be alive. When I found out that the stone had been recovered, I was filled with joy, but I still found it hard to believe that my friends, Jesse and Elisa, stole the moonstone. They had no reason to do so. I knew Elisa was hurting, but I also knew that she wasn't capable of such evil. Elisa was elated when she found out the son of the Delta, Mason, was her fated mate. She had a crush on him ever since she could remember, but he never noticed her. Her station in the pack made it impossible. Finally, the moon goddess had brought them together. Her hopes were high until Mason Whitespear decided to mate with her and reject her. He claimed the sex was a farewell gift, a taste of what they might have had. Elisa didn't take the rejection well. She had kept to herself for a couple of weeks. Sometimes at night, I would hear her wolf, Celia, howling at the moon, angry at the moon goddess for her fate. Eventually, she accepted the rejection, and it seemed she had moved on. Her running away with Jesse made me realize she hadn't moved on. A mean-looking old lady came to get me at the infirmary. "Rogue, you have been posted to the Alpha quarters," she said, tossing me some clothes. "Wear this. You can't work there in rags. Hurry, we do not have time," she instructed. I could easily tell she was irritated by me. Knowing the Alpha quarters were far from where I slept, I asked her if my sleeping arrangements had changed. "You wish," she replied scornfully, "traitors like you should be put to death." I do not understand why the alpha decided to show the three of you mercy after the bad luck your actions tried to bring upon this pack. When Alex becomes alpha, I believe he would rid our pack of rogues, she said scornfully. Secretly, I was glad to learn that my friends were still alive. It also made me confirm my suspicion that they never took the stone. While on our way to the alpha quarters, I saw something that broke my heart completely. Jesse and Elisa were chained like animals outside the staff quarter. Their necks were chained to a post to restrict their movement. Their eyes were dead, they didn't even recognize or notice me. A beautiful sight? The woman asked, referring to my friends. You like their new living arrangement? She continued to mock. We treated you rogues like wolves, but you chose to act like dogs. I am glad they are getting the treatment they deserve. I hope you do too, she said and continued to laugh. The woman was wicked and stupid. One thing everyone knew about dogs was the fact that they were loyal. It was common knowledge, but I guess she had none. We got to the alpha quarters in total silence. You are in charge of cleaning the alpha's son's apartment. You are not to go anywhere near the alpha's apartment. If you are caught close to their apartment, you would be punished. If anything goes missing, you would be held responsible until proven otherwise. You are entitled to 1 meal a day. You are only allowed to retire to bed after Alpha Alex has gone to bed. You are to resume at 4 in the morning. Always wear what you have on. Do not wear your rags to this place, and your clothes must always be clean. Am I clear? She said, and I nodded in obedience. Life here was going to be more difficult than before. I began to brace myself for what was to come. Alex. I had given strict instructions on how to deal with the rogues, and the pack had handled the task according. They were to make a spectacle of the two thieves to deter any aspirations of criminal activity within the pack. Although I asked them to move the little one here, I instructed the staff to watch her and control her movements and activities within my quarters. Dealing with the rogue issue was a handful. We had bigger problems to deal with. I was determined to make my pack rogue-free when I became alpha. Samantha. My first day working at the alpha quarters was hard. People deliberately bumped into me, hit me, and shoved me around. Some encounters with the residents even left bruises on my body. I kept my head down all the time, tried hard to be calm and stayed out of everyone's way. What I was allowed to eat was worse than what I ate before. Before the alleged theft, we usually waited for the pack members to eat, then we would eat what was left over in the kitchen, but now I was only allowed to eat what was left over on their plates. Which simply meant that if they did not leave leftovers on their plates, I would go hungry. Coming to that conclusion, I had saved the dinner rolls and cakes that were left over from the dinner service. The lifespan of cakes and bread was longer than the actual food. I will have to save them for the days the pack decided to eat all the food on their plate. Alpha Alex did not retire to bed until midnight. I still had a 30 minutes walk to my room. I had taken some extra cakes so I could give them to my friends. When I got to where they were chained, I began to cry. Jessie saw me and started crying. Sam, we are so sorry, she pleaded, but we didn't take the moonstone. We only stole some money to escape, she explained. Her voice was strained and weak. I knelt close to Jessie and hugged her. I put a water bottle to her lips, and she drank the water, then I fed her some cakes, which she ate slowly. When I put the bottle to Elisa's lips, she did not open her mouth to drink. She just kept staring into oblivion. She won't eat, drink or speak, Jessie explained. She has been that way for 2 days now. I don't know what to do, Sam. Jessie began to cry. I don't want to lose her, she wept, and I hugged her. Elisa, please don't be hard on yourself, I began. Don't let them break your spirit for a crime you did not commit. Please Elisa, eat something, I pleaded, but she just ignored me. There was something about her behavior that made me fear we had lost her completely. I need to run, Jessie, I excused myself. I will be back with dinner tomorrow, I promise, I said, and she nodded slowly. I left my friends with a broken heart. When I got to my room, I immediately washed the work clothes that were given to me. I squeezed it hard so it would dry quickly. The instructions given to me were clear. I was to resume work every morning in the same work clothes clean. I intended to do that. All I wanted to do was survive. Chapter 5, Humiliation. Samantha. A few weeks later, Elisa passed away. My heart was broken, but I was also relieved that she had found peace. Jessie was released and allowed to continue working at the pack house. Although we were still friends, something had broken in her. Something unfixable. 14 months passed, and I was gradually looking forward to my 18th birthday. I had been hearing a female voice in my head for a while. I was scared that the hostility and loneliness had begun to get to me. Whenever I heard the voice, I would experience a total blackout. I prayed very hard to keep my sanity. One day, while the voice spoke to me, I accidentally wandered close to the Alpha's apartment. I had no clue I was heading in that direction as the voice in my head had completely taken control of my body. Before I could change course, Luna Michelle spotted me. I was still apologizing when some men showed up and arrested me. While in the holding cell, I wondered what crime I must have committed during my blackout episode. I have been accused several times of doing weird things that I couldn't remember. I hoped hard that I had not done anything bad during my blackout. Alex. My parents were at it again. My mother wanted the rogue girl gone, but my father refused. I was in support of my father at first, but soon I began to notice the rogue's strange behaviors. There were times I saw her engaged in a conversation with herself. There were times that she would be working, then suddenly, she would stop and stare into oblivion. There was a particular day that her brown eyes flashed a golden color. I wasn't sure what I had seen, but I saw the golden color in her eyes. It wasn't a light trick because it was night, and we were indoors. My duty as the Alpha's son was to watch my father's back. I had done some research about wolves' behavior, mental illnesses, and diseases, but found nothing. I began to worry about the danger the rogue might pose to the pack. But my father wouldn't have it. He was adamant about keeping the girl in his quarters. I knew I couldn't convince him, so I hoped an opportunity would present itself for me to deal with the situation. Samantha. I was glad when I was finally released from the cell. Somehow I felt the moon goddess was watching over me. I could only have been lucky so many times. I prayed hard for the blackout episodes to stop. The episodes never stopped, they became more frequent, but I was lucky enough to never be caught within the vicinity of the Alpha's apartment, and that helped me. One day I was summoned by Alpha Alex. The staff that came to call me seemed excited. I knew that the reason could not be good. On getting to Alex's room, I was shocked at the sight of what lay on his bed. It was one of his favorite shirts ruined by color. "Can you explain this, rogue?" he asked me angrily. I was speechless. I knew there was no way I was responsible for it because I always sorted out the laundry before washing. Although I knew I couldn't have ruined his shirt, I wasn't sure I didn't do it because of my blackouts. "Cat got your tongue?" he asked, and I shook my head in response. "Do you know what today is?" he asked, and I shook my head. "I have a community party to attend today, and you've ruined the shirt I wanted to wear. What do you have to say for yourself?" he asked with a scary glint in his eyes. Immediately I fell to my knees and began to beg. I dreaded the punishment he would give me for ruining his shirt. I dreaded it all. He paused for a while, looking at me, then he began to smile. I could see the light bulb go off in his head, and I became scared. "I do not have any means of entertainment for the party. If you can allow me to use you as entertainment, I would let this go," he said. I dreaded what he meant by entertainment, but I also knew I had no choice. I just stared at him in fear. A few hours later, I found out what Alex meant by entertainment. I had never been so humiliated in my life. Alex had a leash around my neck and made me walk on all fours like a dog. "Alex, who's your pet?" Cynthia asked me, looking at the rogue I had on a leash. "Everyone, meet Sam the puppy. This is punishment for ruining my clothes," I joked, and we all began to laugh. I hoped the rogue would run away after this. My mother had thrown community parties more often than required, all for my sake so I could find my mate. She had been at it since I was 21, and now I was 23, and I was yet to find my mate. She practically hijacked the event for my benefit. Community parties were meant to be rotated and hosted by different packs, but my mother had taken it over completely, and I knew she wouldn't stop until I found my mate. I had told her I wanted to claim someone I liked and move past the whole mate thing, but my father had disagreed. He claimed he didn't want me to miss out on the moon goddess's gift of love, romance, and completeness. Because of this, my mother threw parties every 3 months, inviting female wolves from near and far. To broaden the range, she included she-wolves that were way older than me but were of childbearing age to also attended, but it never worked. Soon I just learned to enjoy the parties. Does it know any dog trick? Jessica asked me, and I began to feel like I had gone too far this time around. Samantha. Does it know any dog tricks? A girl asked 𝙆𝙬𝙧𝙞𝙬𝙧. It was obvious that she was into him, but he was oblivious of the fact. Get up, 𝙆𝙬𝙧𝙞𝙬 said and removed the collar from my neck. He pulled me aside. You can go. I am sorry, he said, and I was in shock that he would apologize to me for the first time. I am sorry about your shirt, 𝙆𝙬, I said to him, and he was silent, still keeping the hard exterior on his face. As I was about to leave, Luna Michelle blocked us, and I began to shake, keeping my eyes to the ground. I tried to avoid her, but she pulled me back. Mother, let her go, Alex said, and the Luna chuckled. I saw the entertainment, son, and I want it to continue. The rogue has to be good for something, don't you agree? Give me the leash, she asked him, and I knew I was doomed. Let her go, mother, please, he pleaded with her, but he was not the 𝙆𝙬 yet, so he had no authority to stop her. Luna Michelle handed the leash to him, but he refused to accept it, so she called someone else. Entertain the guest, she said, and he collected it from her. Is that even necessary? Alex asked, sounding angry. I will not be a part of this party if you refuse to let her go, he threatened her, and she laughed. You won't order me, son. Besides, I doubt your maid is here. You would have found her otherwise, she said, and he was enraged. Samantha works for me, and I need her to make my bed, he argued. Find someone else to do it for you. If not, then do it yourself, she said and nodded at the guy with the leash. The woman hated me and I did not know why. On your hands and knees, dog, he said, and I painfully complied. I heard Alex fighting but was shocked when his mother ordered them to kick him out. If she could do that to her son, I knew it was best I complied. I followed the man back to where we were initially. Does it know any dog tricks? I heard someone ask, and I hoped someone would end this. I don't know. Let's see, the man, whom I did not know his name, replied, and I began to worry. Roll over, he instructed, and I did my best immediately to imitate a dog rolling over. They all began to laugh. Bark, doggy, one of the girls said excitedly at what I might do. When I hesitated, the man kicked me hard. The pain was so much that my bark came out weak, followed by whimpers. Play dead, another said, and I complied. Soon people began to gather while I performed dog tricks on request and order. I tried to memorize their faces, especially the man with the leash. If the goddess ever smiled at me, I intended to come for them. Eat this, the asshole said, placing a small sandwich on the floor in front of me. He wanted me to eat it like a dog. I had no choice but to comply. I began to bite pieces of the sandwich with just my mouth on the floor. The ladies laughed. It was clear they were having a good time at my expense. While I ate, tears fell from my eyes. I remembered my family, our pack. How I was loved and pampered. Those days were now a distant memory, and misery was now my reality. Sometimes I had thought of dying, but whenever I remembered my mother's words and sacrifice, I became determined to live, determined not to let our bloodline end. Eating that sandwich on the floor made me wonder how long I could hold on. Chapter 6, Close Encounter. Samantha. There were days I wanted to just run away and go and live with humans, but I knew how difficult it would be. We lived differently from the humans, it would have been difficult to fit in if I left now. I did not have the skills or the education to survive in the human part of the world. My parents never saw the need to integrate with humans, and that had now affected me. I knew I would have to leave the Yellow Moon Pack one day, but I needed to get my wolf before I go. With my wolf, I believed I would be able to survive the world outside the Yellow Moon Pack. I wasn't being paid for my work as the other pack members. Because of that, I knew it would take more effort for me to survive outside the Yellow Moon pack. The dog incident was on my mind for months and my blackouts had gotten worse. It was so bad that most of the pack knew about it and didn't fail to tease me about it at every opportunity they got. My new name was Space Dog, derived from the community party event and my blackouts. I spent most of my days working and avoiding the pack members. I would sneak in to do my chores and hide at the back. The teasing and bullying were minimalized this way, but the mental abuse remained. Alex had gone night hunting and decided to let me retire early instead of waiting for him to return. I was glad because I would get some good sleep. On my way back to my room, I was accosted by some wolves. "Rogue," one of them called out, approaching me. I stepped back. There was no use running away from them because I knew they would catch up with me. I remained silent and kept my eyes to the ground, praying to the moon goddesses that they would get bored and walk away. Unfortunately for me, they came closer. "Have you learned any new tricks?" One of the guys mocked me, referring to the dog incident at Alpha Alex's party. They all began to laugh. Before I knew it, I was surrounded. The one behind me grabbed me and pulled my hands to my back. "Alpha Alex teach you any new tricks, Space Dog?" the supposed leader said, walking close to me while his friends held me in place. Soon I could feel his breath on my face, and it reeked of alcohol. "Please let me go," I pleaded, and he smiled. "Not until you show me some new tricks," he said with a big grin. Suddenly he started to violate my body with his hands. I screamed hard. The moment I screamed, he pressed his palm over my mouth to shut me up, but I didn't relent. I bit hard on his palm till I drew blood. He pulled his hand with a yelp. I managed another scream. He punched me hard across the face, and I fell. I began to fear what was about to happen to me. I was isolated. Most of the pack members were in their quarters. No one would save me. I knew I had to try to get away. I intended to run back to the Alpha quarters. They pinned me down and the asshole came over me and reached under my skirt. One of them covered my mouth with all his strength so I couldn't scream. The drunk bit down on my nipples through the fabric of my clothes and the pain was blinding. I felt his hand pull on my panties and tears began to fall from my eyes. Jesse had told me once that this would happen, but I didn't expect it would. I tried to space out but I couldn't, so I prayed. "Alex." On my way back from hunting, I heard a scream. It was unusual at that time of the night, so I hurried to go and check what it was. I only heard the scream once, so I wasn't clear what direction it came from. Fearing what might be happening, I prayed the person would scream again. It took a few seconds, but the second scream came. It was towards the staff quarters. I immediately shifted to my wolf form to enable me to get there faster. I was appalled by what I saw. 4 wolves were trying to have their way with Samantha. I summoned the Alpha Authority and commanded them to stop. Samantha. A huge black wolf stood some feet from us. It was bigger than the regular wolves. I was the first to see it. Before I could do anything, my attackers had stopped and stepped away from me. "Alex." I recognized the 4 wolves that had tried to *PE Samantha. I was going to make an example of them. Our *PE was unacceptable in this pack, and as the future alpha, I intended to make that clear. I ordered them to return to their quarters. The 4 of them moved immediately, but Samantha lay on the ground shaking. I tried to use my alpha authority on her to return to her quarters, but it did not work. This baffled me because no ordinary wolf could resist an alpha's authority. I knew I needed to investigate. Samantha's ability to resist alpha's authority was not a good thing. I knew I had to change back to my human form to give my order. Samantha. While I lay on the ground shaking, I saw the huge black wolf transform back to its human form. To my surprise, it was Alpha Alex, and he was naked. I looked away immediately. "Go home, you are safe," he ordered and went away. I walked back to my room in fear. When I resumed work the next day, I was summoned to the Alpha's office. On getting there, I saw Alpha Alex and his father waiting for me. I greeted them with all the respect I could summon. I was scared I had done something wrong. Samantha, how old are you now? Alpha Wildbreed asked. I am 18 years old, I replied, confused. We have asked around about the Blackwell family, and no one knows them. Is there anything you can tell us about your family? He asked. I began to sweat. Of course, they wouldn't find anything about the Blackwell family because they didn't exist. My parents kept a lot from me, Alpha, I lied. They didn't tell you anything about your family and lineage, he asked, and I shook my head. At what age would your wolf emerge? He asked, and I told him 21. He nodded and dismissed me. Alex. Father, I don't think it is wise to keep her here. She can resist Alpha's authority. That is dangerous. I pointed out. Let's wait till she gets her wolf and see what happens. Besides, Alex, you are not Alpha yet, until I officially hand it over to you. You can use some Alpha authority because you have Alpha blood. Maybe Samantha Blackwell is stronger than the average wolf, he said with a smile and dismissed the conversation. I don't like the way she is looking. Put her on the staff payroll. She has earned it, he finalized. I knew I couldn't argue with him. Although Samantha was clumsy and absent-minded, she was very hard-working. I agreed with my father's decision. Besides, it was for the best. If she was wise, she would save some of her earnings because I intended to make our pack rogue-free when I became Alpha. I knew it would be fatal to let the matter rest, so I put Robert and Mason to investigate the Blackwells. No matter how long they committed a crime, there would be a record of them in the Wolf Society. If you want to read more about Spirit Wolf, then you can come to Popink app and search for the novel and read more about it.